today. I am Mindie Molina. This is the Mindie Molina Show, and you are listening to WCNO Palm City, 89.9 FM, and we are so glad that you are tuned in. Today, we're going to be talking about this thing called the Key Man Policy. We're going to talk about what it is, what it does, different segments of it, and then buy-sell agreements. If you're a business owner, also, if you're married to a business owner, if you are the wife of a business owner or you have a partner in business, this show is so for you. So stick around with us. We're going to really cover a lot of information today on different types of insurance, different things that can happen, why it's important, and I have a really special guest here with me today. My good friend and awesome advisor, Frank Borelli, here with me. And then I have Mark Dombrowski, who is a longtime partner in the field of financial planning. I met Mark when I first started in the business and got to know him very well because we have a lot of similarities when it comes to our hobbies. And Mark Dombrowski is one of the best alligator hunters in the state of Florida, or certainly that I'm aware of. I think he knows more about alligator hunting than anyone. Do you know anyone that knows more about it, Mark, than you?
I'm not sure. Maybe some of the biologists.
So I know you were not expecting me to say I have a special guest that's an expert in alligators. No, he's also an expert in life insurance and in financial planning for businesses when it comes to legacy planning, buy-sell agreements, all of these things. And that's how I know him, is from that. But he also took me lobstering down in the Keys. Had an absolute blast. He's very, very good at that. So an outdoorsman. So I'm in the room right now with these two men. Frank can assemble a helicopter and like fly it out to who knows where. And Mark can wrestle any alligator. I don't know if I feel safe or scared. But today we're going to dive into some of this information. So I hope you find value in all of it. And this is the Mindie Molina Show. You can find us on YouTube. You can find my firm, MindieMolina.com, M-I-N-D-I-E, Molina, M-O-L-I-N-A. And you can call in with questions. So if you're driving from work or on your way to a meeting, something like that, or at home listening, please call in if you have any questions, or you can even leave your number if you're shy and you don't want to be on the air. And Frank, what is the
772-221-1100? You can reach us. It's a live program. 772-221-1100.
So let's dive in. The Key Man Policy. So what is it exactly in very layman terms, Mark? What is a policy that they call the Key Man Policy?
Well, I think, Mindy, what we have to start, and we have to think about a business, what is the key man of the business?
Yes.
So when we think about a business, let's say, for an example, if you own the business, you're the owner of the business, you have a staff, and you may have clerical staff, you may have a lot of people, but in that business, you have people in your business, and most businesses do, that cannot run without a certain person. In your situation, possibly Frank. Mm-hmm. You can't run the business without a certain person. That's key man. That's a key man to you. In some situations, family-owned businesses, it may be their children. Maybe their son may be taking over the business one day, and we want to make sure that we're protecting that. Now, what happens to the business? What happens to the business if something happens to that key person? In certain situations, the business may fold. So we have to think about how can we protect the business, and Key Man Insurance does exactly that. It's not for the individual, and it's not a estate plan or anything else. It's an insurance policy that protects the business. So if somebody dies in that business, that key person dies, well, we have to replace them. There's a huge cost. A lot of times, especially if it's a family member, we may not be able to get somebody else at the cost that we're paying that family member, or it's hard to replace one person's knowledge with one person.
I'm looking here at this one statistic, and 4 in 5 business owners, small business owners, this was from the small business survey, 4 in 5 small business owners say that there is an 88% chance that yes, if that there's one particular person in their business that if they left, it would affect them financially, and like you said, fold, right? There's a lot of implications that we think of it as a simple, maybe this person is a producer, maybe they are the expert contractor, maybe can you think of some examples of who in some different businesses, like the example that you're just saying about the advisor that just passed away. Share that story.
So what happens is in this situation we just had recently, where an insurance advisor had passed away. He owned his section of the firm, so he owned the firm. He was a key person in the firm. Now the firm may not close down, but the firm is definitely going to be hindered by his loss. So they're going to have to replace him. So there's a cost to the company to replace him, both in the knowledge and what he does. So in some situations,
and the loyalty.
Absolutely.
My clients are very loyal to me. If something happens to me, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to connect with Frank. They may just say, oh, Mindy's gone, and then they leave our business.
Right.
And so having that could be a loss to the revenue of the firm, which ultimately is going to affect everybody else that's involved.
Yeah,
Right?
and I think the loyalty is very important because some people, maybe yourself, they work very long hours. Some people they own the firm, or they're the key person. The reason they're the key person is because they're working 12, 13, 14 hours. When you go to replace that person, you may actually need to replace 2 people or even 3 people to replace that one person. You could see that large cost that would come back to the firm if we had to put 3 people in the job that we just replaced with 1. So there's a cost to the firm. What we're trying to do is we're trying to replace that cost with insurance.
Could
pennies on
even
the
be
dollar.
moving expenses to bring that next person in, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all of that has to be considered. So when you think about a moving expense, you may find the person that you're going to replace lives in a different state, and you have to bring that person to the state. So there's all those costs as well. Good point.
Yeah, and right now we're talking about the loss to the business alone, and how they're going to rebound if that key person is gone, and then what is the value depending on, and I know that a lot of people think sometimes it's just about a partnership, right? So if you have 2 people that are in business together, they insure one for the other, so if something happens to the other person, but then it kind of shuffles out and can be way more complex than that. But we also look at it as, like you said, employees, key employees. Maybe they have a gift of the perfect installation of certain things, or they have some sort of art or talent or gift of, like you said, an advisor, having the loyalty, having the following. It's very easy to lose a really good employee and then have your revenue affected by that. But was there any other costs that would come that a business could be affected by when it comes to like losing a partner or an employee that I'm maybe not thinking of?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of cost in here. So when you think about one of the costs that you have to really deal with is the income to the business. So let's just think in the sales side. If you take your key salesman, there's a reason why he's the key salesperson. Either he has the contacts, he has the leads, he's a little bit smoother than everyone else. There's reasons for that. You take him out of the mix, you still have the same amount of people coming into your firm. Let's call it a car dealership. Car dealership has a key person, and coming into that firm, that they're still coming into the firm, and the difference being is you're not closing the deal. So not only are you losing the income to the firm, but you still have all the fixed costs. So the car dealership or the firm that you're working with would still have large electric bills, phone bills, everything else, but less money coming in, and that's where you have that upside down approach.
That's
if you
how
don't
business
do
is
something.
sold.
Yeah.
Because exactly what you said, and it's huge. And then going into the other side of it, so let's say you do have a partnership, 2 people that own a business, and having a key man policy on the partner, the owner. So now we're looking at not only the loss of their value to the company, how their loss is going to affect productivity, how their loss is going to affect revenue, income coming in, how they're going to offset those costs that are still costs for loans, costs for just keeping the business afloat. And let's face it, there can be a grievance time too, the partner is probably going to be affected. So things slow down, but let's talk about the spouse. And just for example, let's say it's a man and his wife is at home, and now he has 50%, for example, share of the business. What happens to that share? It automatically goes to her.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know a part of this show we're going to talk about buy-sell agreements, so we really want to cover that. That's important. But to go back to the key man, I think you're really hitting on something that's very important. The key man can be the business owner, and if you think about how many businesses, especially the local businesses here, how many mom and pop, in a sense, business are there? Both husband and wife work at the firm. They both share in different jobs. Yeah, they both might work the cash register, but there's a possibility that the husband may be going out and having relationships that he has, whereas the wife may bring relationships also that she has into the firm. So you take one of those out, the relationships are now severed.
Yeah, where he's the producer and she's running the books.
Absolutely.
It's usually the mix like that, but one doesn't do the other.
Yeah, no question about it. So if you think about if mom or the wife is running the books and something were to happen to her, he's going to have to hire a bookkeeper. And the same thing for him. If he has a lot of the relationships and something happens to him, she's going to have to replace him. And you don't even know how you do that. I mean, think about if she's the bookkeeper, trying to replace him would be extremely difficult.
In many cases, too, of course, with consultation with your CPA, these expenses to the business could be a business expense, the insurance.
Well, they absolutely are a business expense. They are a business expense. They should be handled as a business expense, much the same as when you look at health insurance. Health insurance can be handled by the business and paid for by the business. You know, these types of things, what this is basically doing, key man, is making sure that the business survives.
Right.
That's the key of this, is make sure that the business survives if you take one of the key people out of it.
How do you create value for that? So I have this theory based on my experience working with a lot of widows, and is that the grieving segment of a person's life. And I thoroughly believe that if you have your breadwinner who leaves you by death, you really need 2 years of income at a minimum to replace their income. And I know sometimes we just wing it when it comes to life insurance, like, oh, give me a couple $100,000, I'll take $1 million. Like, we don't have an actual objective with the number. It's just give me what I can afford, or whatever the insurance agent wants to sell you. But I like to see a strategy that says at least for a spouse to be able to grieve in place for 12 solid months, and to have income coming in, have zero financial distress, and for that to be covered so that they are not, because during that time, you're vulnerable. People are coming to your rescue, they want to help you, but you also can be vulnerable in making emotional choices that perhaps had you waited, you wouldn't have made.
Now, while we're talking about business insurance, Key Man Insurance, you can call in. This is a live radio program. Feel free to call in with your stories or questions about anything you may have at 772-221-1100. 772-221-1100.
Thank you, Frank. So having that first year to just grieve in place, nothing changes. You don't have to sell your house. It doesn't matter to you that you just lost half your Social Security, and you don't have to sell your car. You don't have to sell his car. You can just grieve in place. Nothing changes because his income for that year has been provided to you through the insurance. Now in the second year, you're going to start to get your strength back. You're going to start to get your mojo. You're going to start feeling like you're going to be okay, and you're going to be ready to address these challenges financially. Maybe you do decide you want to move. Maybe you decide you don't. Maybe you decide you're going to move on a cruise and just travel the world for the rest of your life. Whatever you decide to do after that first year is probably going to be more logical and less emotional. And then now you have the power that the income is coming in. Now you have the time on your side. You have the ability to make sound decisions for the rest of your life if you just give yourself that 2-year window. Because in that second year, that's when you're going to be ready to figure things out. So I think going back to the Key Man policy, it's like creating value of how much insurance should you have right? And there's the value that's going to affect the business itself, and especially if you have a team and you aren't just going to close the business, you want all of that to keep going. How much time is necessary, and how much revenue do we need to bring in for? I mean, do you have a time on a business that you think they need typically to get back on their feet and get back in their group, to get their mojo back when they lose a key man?
I don't know that there's a definitive answer, but most businesses know it. So it's not something that we would know sitting here talking back and forth with one another, but businesses know. If you took out your key person, whomever that may be, how is that going to affect you? How badly will that affect you? Is that going to affect you with 1 times his income? So in 1 year, the business is back on its feet? Probably not. And the average, when you're looking at key man, the average amount is 4 times the key person's income. Mm-hmm. And the reason they do that is, Mindy, you're exactly correct. It takes a business 2 years to survive. That's number one. And when you think about the business trying to get back on their feet and getting up and going again, you have all the other costs that are incorporated. And we talked about if you had to go out and hire multiple people.
Right.
So
let me ask you this, with that value. So let's say a business takes out a key man policy for 4 times the income of Mark. So Mark Dombrowski is insured as a key man in your firm for 4 times your income. How much of that would go to your family?
Well, key man is very specific. So a key man insurance plan only goes to the business. It only protects the business. So I think that's important, but I know in today's segment, we're going to talk about, buy-sell agreements. That's family. That's
right
where
now.
everything, yeah, we're going to move right into that.
Let's move
But
right
I think
into the
that's a perfect
buy-sell.
segue. Yeah, so key man only protects the business. Buy-sell is where it protects everything else. So let's go there.
So what is a buy-sell agreement?
So,
well, let me go back to that scenario, because that might be a good way for you to explain it, the difference. Because in the scenario that I just said, let's include the wife. Let's just say one of the partners is insured for 4 times, and then I guess I was using you as the example. So Mark, you're insured for 4 times your income by the business, and now you're no longer there, and your family, what ownership is the buy-sell agreement helps? Is it going to provide any income for them? Is the key man policy going to provide anything for them? How do we take care of the business and the family at the same time?
good point. And sometimes you have to look at each business in and of itself. So is the business a family-owned business? And in that regard, then yes, we'd have to take care of the family, obviously. If the business is not a family-owned business, then the key man protects the business and all the other owners and corporate entities of the business. That's where we have to go with that. As we get into the buy-sell, and let's talk about what a buy-sell is, because a buy-sell is so important. And when I think about a buy-sell agreement, I think of what business needs a buy-sell. And in the back of my mind, I guess I've been in this business too long, but I'd say every one of them. And the ones that may not need it as much would be a sole proprietor. He may not need a buy-sell as much. And the same thing is when you had a husband and wife that own the business. Obviously, we just got done talking about key man. It's so important for that. They may or may not need a written buy-sell. But a buy-sell agreement is a written document. So it's a written document. Typically, it comes from an attorney. You can go down to your local office supply store, purchase the document itself, fill in the document, get it notarized, and it is legally binding. But most people and most businesses prefer to go to an attorney. So the attorney is going to write the document. The document itself is going to lay out everything that you need in that business, because when we think about the loss in a business, now we're talking about buy-sell, but when we're talking about that key person, that buy-sell person, there's 3 things that happen. Number 1, he could die, and of course that's why the insurance would come in. The other thing is, let's say for an example, he becomes disabled. That's a very real thing. Car accidents and things like that, he becomes disabled. And the
conflict?
Absolutely.
Can conflict be included? Like if you have 2 partners and they get into a fight, does the buy-sell agreement, can it include that, or even if one of them gets divorced?
Well, we can certainly talk about what if one leaves. You know, and I'm thinking sometimes in my mind I think about retirement, but the reality is if one of the partners leaves the firm, for whatever reason, that partner leaves the firm, two things. Number one is the firm needs to protect itself, but there has to be some kind of an agreement. There's something, if you and I were business owners, Mindy, and we worked together for 25 years, and for whatever reason we disagreed and I left the firm, well, the firm still owes me something.
Right.
And you know, so that's spelled out in the agreement.
So is it all based on equity? Like what happens to your equity in the firm? And